Welcome back, capital F football fans, to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. Today we're going over our preview and predictions for week 2 of the 2024 college football season. If you're ready for it, be sure to like and subscribe. It's going to be a great week, and be sure to share it if you enjoy it. It helps us out a lot. And without further ado, let's jump right into it, starting with some games we think you should be watching this weekend. And for today's games, we think you should be watching BYU at SMU. It's a cross-conference matchup that should be pretty interesting. Both teams are about on each other's levels. It'll be BYU's first real test this season and SMU's second test after a shaky performance against Hawaii in week 0. Bound to be some excitement there, and we think you should be tuning into Duke at Northwestern later on tonight. A matchup most people might shake off, but if you're a true sicko, you'll look at this matchup with a glimmer in your eye. Two teams that struggled a bit in week 1. Northwestern beat Miami of Ohio 13-6, and Duke beat Elon 26-3. Two solid defenses and two okay-ish, maybe a little subpar offenses. Should be a low-scoring affair. The spread opened at Northwestern -2.5 with a 36.5 over-under. That sounds like a capital F football game to us, and we'll absolutely be tuning into that one. And as for Saturday, we think some games you should be watching are going to be number 17 Kansas State going to Tulane. Another interesting one. Both teams looked good against their FCS opponents, and it is at Tulane. Not amazing for the Wildcats, but they still open as a 9.5-point favorite over the Green Wave, and they're going to be the more talented team, so it'll be interesting to see the impact the home crowd plays on this one. Next, we think number 23 Georgia Tech going to Syracuse will be a game to watch. This is a big ACC matchup. Two teams that were underappreciated coming into the year who have looked pretty decent so far, to say the least. We are excited to see this matchup against Kyle McCord and Haynes King. Who would have thought we would be saying that this year? Georgia Tech is a slight favorite, and this is surprisingly already a very important matchup in the ACC. Two teams that we were not high on coming into the year, but look like they'll probably be playing integral roles in the outcome of the conference. So we'll keep an eye out on that one. The next we have is South Carolina at Kentucky. South Carolina struggled against Old Dominion. Kentucky blew out Southern Miss. So there isn't really a ton to talk about for this one, other than the amazing performance from South Carolina's edge rushers Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart. They combined for 5 tackles for loss and 4 sacks against Old Dominion. And if they can play that well against Kentucky, they may stand a chance. And that is a very real possibility. South Carolina's offense was not great, had a very rough performance against Old Dominion. But as long as their defense stands strong, they could take this one to the wire at Kentucky. And our next game is Cal at Auburn, an under-the-radar matchup. Auburn went out and stomped all over Alabama A&M. They looked very impressive in that matchup, but Cal isn't going to roll over. They're going to be a big underdog, seeing as they go to Jordan-Hare, and Auburn looked so amazing last week. But expect Cal to stay in this one. They're going to be Auburn's first real test, and they are no pushover, like we said. Our next matchup comes out of the group of 5. It's our group of 5 highlight matchup this week. It's UTSA at Texas State. It is the I-35 rivalry. This is going to be a close matchup between two teams that underperformed a bit relative to their expectations in week 1. But don't underestimate this matchup. It should be a blast. It'll be two very fun offenses going back and forth in this one. Don't be surprised if both teams cross the 30-point threshold. And for our last game to watch, it's going to be Mississippi State at Arizona State. This matchup is another silently amazing one in week 2. Two teams with very low expectations who came out of the gate in week 1 and performed very well. Arizona State dismantled what should be a fairly okay Wyoming team, and Mississippi State destroyed an FCS team and looked great while doing it. The matchup between Sam Leavitt of Arizona State and Blake Shapen of Mississippi State should be very exciting to watch. Both offenses don't look bad. Neither of those teams are probably two of the better teams in their conferences, respectively. But as for this matchup, it should be a very solid pairing. And next we have our big impact matchups for week 2. starting with Arkansas at number 16, Oklahoma State. And boy, is this one spicy. We have an Arkansas team that overperformed in week 1, taking on an Oklahoma State team that underperformed a bit against a solid South Dakota State team. Both teams look decent, but we'll have to figure out just exactly how decent they are in this one. And the biggest factor to us in this game is going to be Arkansas's Taylon Green. He tore the house down in week 1, and if he can be anywhere near as good as he was last week, Oklahoma State is going to be in for a long day. Next, we have a rivalry matchup. It's Iowa State at number 21, Iowa. It is the battle for the Cy-Hawk Trophy, and it's going to be interesting for sure. Coming into this season, we had Iowa State as the favorite in this one, but seeing Iowa's offense way outperform expectations in week 1 has us teetering on the fence. Iowa State is a 2.5 point dog, and they're gonna be going to Kinnick, which could end up being the difference maker in this one. We'll be keeping our eye on that one. But next, we have a neutral site matchup. It's number 14 Tennessee taking on number 24 NC State. We're not quite sure exactly how this one is going to go, but if it's anything like last week, give us Tennessee by 100. NC State just did not look great against Western Carolina. Contrary to Tennessee's outstanding performance against Chattanooga, could have just been an off day for the Wolfpack and Grayson McCall. But as it stands, we have a lot more confidence in Tennessee as a whole than we do NC State. And after that one, we have App State taking on Clemson in Death Valley. Clemson really could not have drawn a worse hand than this. Starting out the year, they went out and got stomped against Georgia, and now they have to play an App State team that could be in the college football playoff this season. Clemson will be far more talented than App State, and it will be played in Death Valley, but it'll still be very intriguing for us to see if the loss last week takes a toll on the team as a whole heading into this one. And next, we have Boise State at number 7, Oregon. Oregon wildly underperformed against Idaho last week, which immediately has us concerned for them in this one, similarly to the last game. And ultimately, we have faith in Dan Lanning and the Ducks, but if they go out and play 75% football, 80% football, even 85% football, you may not get past the Broncos. They're going to be another team vying for that group of 5 playoff bid. They looked pretty good last week. They showed that they can go out and win in a shootout scenario. So the Ducks absolutely cannot afford to go out and lay an egg in this one. No pun intended. Lowercase f football in this case will not be what it takes to beat the Broncos. And for our last big impact matchup, we have number 3 Texas going to the Big House to play number 10 Michigan. It's going to be a battle of the Titans here. Michigan didn't look great offensively against Fresno State, but they're going to be able to hold it close with all of their opponents this year just because that defense is so good. But Texas is going to have something to say about that. Quinn Ewers balled out in week 1. The team looked flawless at every level, and their defense also isn't something you want to overlook. Going to be an uphill battle for the Wolverines, but in all fairness, they are a team that's used to beating the odds. And that's it for our big impact matchups. For our game of the week, we want to preface it by informing the public that from now on, we're going to ask our viewers to vote on the game of the week. So be sure to look out for that as well as other polls in the near future. But this week, you voted on it, and our game of the week is going to be Colorado at Nebraska. 2 unranked teams, but this is going to be a very heated matchup. These 2 teams and fan bases absolutely despise each other. It's going to be an awesome matchup between 2 really good quarterbacks in Nebraska's Dylan Raiola and Colorado's Shedeur Sanders. And in terms of overall talent, we have to give the edge to Nebraska here. They're going to be a much better overall team than the Buffaloes, as you'll see the stats pop up on your screen here. But Colorado has 2 NFL players, maybe 3 on that offense in Shador and Travis Hunter and maybe a couple of the other wide receivers. And as long as those guys are on the field, you're never going to be able to count the Buffaloes out of any of their games. They are both amazing. And our players to watch in this one are going to be those quarterbacks. They both balled out last week, and they're both probably going to be the deciding factors of this game. Nebraska's defense is very good, but Sanders is going to be able to find his guys down the field. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So Raiola is going to have to keep up. Can't really afford to have a bad performance against a team that can score very quickly like Colorado. And moving on to our upset watch featuring our good buddy Todd. Everybody say hello to Todd. Thank you. And for our first upset watch team, Todd went out and he picked Clemson versus App State. Now, Clemson fans, we do apologize to you for the theatrics this early on, but man, is this game an important one for the Tigers. App State is an explosive team. They can beat you on 2 or 3 big plays, and that's all you'll need to beat a team like Clemson, who struggles to generate a lot of success on offense. Todd is giving this one an upset rating in the danger zone at a 9 out of 10. And Tiger fans, you can go ahead and start biting those fingernails now. Next on upset watch, we have Oregon taking on Boise State. Like we talked about before, the Ducks can't afford to sleepwalk against this Boise State team, especially because the Broncos offense can get down the field quick, fast, and in a hurry. And if you come into this one assuming you're going to win, you're going to lose. I can go ahead and guarantee it to you now. I don't even need Todd on this one. If you come in and expect to win like they did against Idaho, in this game against Boise State, you're gonna lose. Now, do we think that'll happen? Probably not. We know Todd doesn't because he's only got this game in warm territory at a 6.5. And for our last upset watch matchup, it's Kansas State going to Tulane. You could probably see this from a mile away. This one is going to be hard to call. We think Kansas State is the clear favorite, and we're not really worried about them as a team. It's more so going to be about Tulane in this one, especially the environment they're going into. Tulane's not a team that messes around traditionally. We know they lost Fritz this offseason, but they arguably upgraded in snagging John Summerall from Troy. He's going to pick up right where Fritz left off, and they'll get to play this game at home, which is why Todd has this game in hot territory at a 7.5. Watch out, Wildcats. And that is it for Upset Watch. Let's get into our predictions for this week. Starting with Arkansas at Oklahoma State. This game is intriguing for us for a lot of reasons, the most of which is Bobby Petrino and Talon Green. Bobby Petrino being back at Arkansas just feels right. And you can already tell that offense looked much more rejuvenated than it did last year. But as a team overall, we are much more confident in Oklahoma State, especially since this game's going to be in Stillwater, which is why we have Oklahoma State winning this one 28-17. Next, we have Iowa State going to Kinnick to take on Iowa. Like we said earlier, we were pretty confident that Iowa State would win this game coming into this year, but seeing Iowa play last week instilled a lot more confidence in them than in years past. Now, it could be false confidence, but even if they still don't have a good offense, it looks much improved to last year's, which is really all we needed, to see. We like Rocco Becht, we like Matt Campbell, and Iowa State as a whole this year, but we have the Hawkeyes taking this one in a close battle, 20-16. And next, we have Tennessee going to Charlotte to take on NC State. It's going to be more of a home game for NC State, if we had to assume, than Tennessee, although Tennessee fans are going to travel well. And we think this is an interesting matchup. Don't get us wrong, but we think these two teams are on totally different levels right now. If NC State can prove us wrong and keep this one tight, we'll bite our tongue. But for now, we like Tennessee in this one, and we don't think it'll be particularly close. we have Tennessee beating the Wolfpack 45-17 in Charlotte. And for one of our upset watch teams, it's App State going to Clemson. This one is going to be a joy to watch. We love these kinds of matchups, but we can understand why a Clemson fan might not. But for the Tigers, the key in this game is ultimately going to be holding Joey Aguilar to 1 or 2 big plays over the air, which they are more than capable of doing. The App State rushing attack was pretty subpar outside of a few big runs. Their running backs average under 3.5 yards per carry on average. So if you can keep them honest, you can win this game, which is what we think will happen. We have the Tigers beating the Mountaineers in a close one, 27-21. And next we have Boise State going to Oregon. We can't state it enough. The key to this one for Oregon is not underestimating the firepower that Boise State has. We trust Dan Lanning. We trust that he knows what he's doing and didn't let the narrow win over Idaho go unpunished. We think Oregon comes out this week looking much stronger, much more focused, and we think they take this one over the Broncos 42-24. And for our last big impact matchup, it's Texas going to Michigan. We think this game, like Notre Dame versus Texas A&M last week, is going to be a gritty battle. Both lines are going to be key elements in this game, and we think ultimately these teams are going to match up unusually well with each other. We think the better team will have to find a new way to win in this one, whether it be Texas securing a score on defense or Michigan finding a hole in the secondary for a big touchdown through the air. But we think the better team will be the Texas Longhorns, and we have them winning this matchup 28-20. And for our O&O Sports Game of the Week, we think it'll be by far the most electric atmosphere of the week. We know the Big House can rock, and we know Kinnick is nothing to sneeze at, but this game has some pretty high stakes for both fan bases and both teams. Nebraska's coming into this one after dropping the last 3 in a row to Colorado, and if they win, we could see them potentially being an undefeated top 15 team going into the Ohio State game in week 9. Their schedule from here on out is not that difficult. That is a real possibility. And for Colorado, this could be the jump start you need to really take off and win 8 or 9 games in the Big 12. 2 very reachable outcomes for both teams. And like we said, we think it'll come down to the play from both quarterbacks. We're not saying it'll be Baker versus Mahomes too, but it'll be important for both guys not to make costly errors that give the other team opportunities. We think they're both great, but we like one team over the other, and that team is the Nebraska Cornhuskers. They look very good in almost every area, and we think they'll take this one in Lincoln, beating the Buffaloes 28-24. A great slate of games going into this week. We are very excited, and we hope you are as well. And that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, like we said, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. It helps us out a lot, and we will see you in the week 2 recap.